All right, Kevin. Continuing our long conversation about these entries, and also, just so grateful for your interaction in the group and your support on Patreon and everything else. You are an awesome member of this community, and this is a really cool score. There are a couple of things that I think you might have accidentally left in, like this F here, kind of like throws off like da 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 dum ba da bum da 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 ba da 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 dum. If you throw in the F here, it kind of like it. I think that this was a copy paste error. So anyway, but yeah, this really kind of throws off the transition upwards to the next thematic material. And then here, I think this is right here, this high F played in oboe and violin. I think that might be is that possibly an error? Just like things sort of jumped up when you weren't expecting it to, because it doesn't quite seem to fit everything else that's happening there. Alrighty, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the horn writing at the beginning. I think that I think you had the intention of, maybe scoring in the style, and maybe it was just a little too much work to add more horns than you did here. That's all cool. But I really like the offbeat horns right in here. This is not a duet, right? Is this a single horn, or now, here, I think if you're going to go triple P, you don't need to double your horns in unison, right? So I think that you could just have a single horn. I think you get a way better sound, especially if you're going to go incredibly soft. And then here you just need a single horn here. In fact, I mean, there is a plethora of a duet scoring in here, which I feel is completely unnecessary. All right, the more you do that, the more you end up with unintended consequences, and the further away you get from the beautiful intimacy and spontaneity of the sound. So, for instance, let's take them all. Let's start with oboe here. So you might be thinking, well, I'm thickening these violins, so maybe I want that joined together sound. But the thing about it is that what you will end up with here is a kind of a harsher sound, right? Rather than having the beautiful, generous sound, the players cannot play as expressively as they might, because they're, if they both are vibratoing at different speeds, and they both have a little bit of wiggle in there in the pitch from time to time, and they're not perfectly matched, then it's going to sound like a dog's breakfast, to use a New Zealand and Commonwealth term, right? So it just you're the more you do that, the more you limit it, especially with oboes, right? So I would say, if you have a very penetrating, intense line, that's great for a duet. If you have a bigger wind sort of spectrum, and maybe the clarinets are playing along too, then you get that nice wind band sound. That's also good for a duet. But here, playing incredibly soft like this and an expressive line, I just don't think it quite fits. And then here, I mean, this is okay, but there's really, I just feel that there's no need for these lines. I mean, you just get a much more beautiful, more intimate sound out of the flutes and the bassoon here. And then here, you're going to get a phased sound with a duet clarinets. I'm not so sure about the period. I usually see it with maybe the accent, because it's saying as if it were French. Yeah, I'm not so sure about the period. I have to look that up. Yeah, so if we're just really assuming that everything is a duet, right? This will just really be wind bandish, and it won't have that same kind of courtly sound, right? That we want in our Beethoven scoring. I think this is probably the biggest problem of all, though, is these trills, right? I would really try to keep trills, like unless it was a massive tutti and you just had sky high scoring, and yeah, I would really keep away from ardue trills in winds. Okay, all right. So that's my gripe. I will come off of my soapbox. So yeah, so let's just look about the function. Let's just forget about all of the all of those unisons and just look at all of the scoring and so on. So like, are you setting the mood effectively? I think so. I think this is a nice, solid. You are pensive without being ponderous, right? But could there be like a possibility of like a little bit of crescendo here? Da 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 da, little fermata, da da da, diminuendo, da 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 da. I think you can get more expression out of this, eh? Yeah, but I mean, it still is a beautiful sound. The way that you scored it, the mock-up's pretty damn good. All right, so now, da 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 ba 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 bum. This is really nice. Just that like having just a little bit of bringing interpreting the line, so the contrary motion is a lot clearer and so on, and then of course having the violas conspiring here with the horns. That I think that flows really beautifully. So like, does the melody start with elegance? Yes, very nicely so. So maybe you're thinking, well, with ardue flutes here, they won't get swallowed up by the violins. Well, yeah, that may not help. But just like having just saying solo, that takes care of the problem, right? Okay. And this is really nice here. This double bass scoring. It's very similar to what I did. I did pizzicato to just like to really kind of get a almost piano articulation kind of a sound. Piano forte. So yeah, but so and is there a natural transition to octaves here? Yes, it's kind of nice. You sort of end up with a triple octave anyway, so you've already got the scope expanded a bit. Yeah, do you expand without clogging up? Yeah, pretty much, I would say. Yeah. All right, and then da 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 dum da 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 dum da 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 dum. So you really have to get rid of this F because it just feels like the music isn't going anywhere. It feels like you're kind of stuck, right? But this is nice, like just a little bit of holding over a little bit. Maybe this is sort of what you were thinking here. But anyways, da 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 dum. Going to clarinets and then violas and then yeah. So there's just a nice kind of back and forth of different contrasts of linear texture, and like and a beautiful contrast with the theme, and you got away with not really needing any harmonic support, really. I mean, you could think of this as harmonic support in a very bare way, right? But still, like, you just kind of really didn't need it. All right, so now we're getting to da 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 ba 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 bum, and like here you kept it really, really, really simple, like just really transcribing the piano line. And here's where I would say, like, maybe rethink this, right? Back to the drawing board on this is what I would really recommend, because, like, okay, one of the problems is, by giving this to the bassoons, right? You have this contrary motion really close to one another, right? How far apart is it in the original source score? They are very far apart, right? They are an octave further apart in either direction, right? So like at the top of the staff, top of the treble staff, this is descending. Bottom of the bass staff, it's ascending, right? So, I mean, that's all well and good. You sort of end up with things in the wrong position when you get to here, right? So this is ya ba ba bum, and it's supposed to go up to this B flat here, right? So like it's kind of coming up and under and supporting, like the motion is going toward the low B flat, right? And then when you get here, da 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 da, you end up with like this C is like right next to this D, right? And then this harmony note of B flat ends up being over the top of the line, right? So that it's, I mean, some of this, like the overtones, can help out a bit for things not to feel like they're colliding too much or enclosing each other too much. But it's still problematic. Just the, and I mean, the main problem though is not so much the closeness together of the parts, right? It is the fact that here you have the opportunity to set up the coming little chorale with a kind of harmonic density, right? So that's one of my criteria. So like just looking back at that, are you really going? Is this really is the triplet line, right? Does it have an emphatic color of line that leads to the next part, right? Da 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 bum bum bum, right? So it doesn't really like this line doesn't really kind of lead to that, and we don't really have any sort of if the ear perceives this as being part of a bass line, then we don't really have the setup to go into this beautiful dun dun dun. Do you see what I mean? So like in the mock-up, it actually sounds kind of cool. So I mean, don't get me wrong, but it just like in terms of players like following each other and like in a symphony, right? So they're sort of like you're scoring in a symphonic style. So in a symphony, like sometimes parts sort of have to kind of naturally lead one to the next, right? So especially in this sort of thematic music with voice leading and stuff like that, right? So I feel that we missed an opportunity here in these 5 beats to set up the coming chorale. Now, if you listen to some of the other evaluations that I have released over the past couple of days, then you'll notice that I'm sort of talking a lot about whether or not there is a need to maintain the strength of this previous passage, right? If we set up the harmonic density, does it naturally lead towards more force here? And then you contrast with that with dynamic, with like just dropping down the dynamics, and then force, and then soft. Now, interestingly, you just chose to just not worry about that at all and just have the chorale work on its own, just as a separate piece of music with no contrasts, really, no changes between texture, no changes between dynamics, no changes between colors of instruments or anything else. Okay, all right, that's fine. Do you really want to go da 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 da? Because like it's sort of I mean I think another thing is like the way that this is set up, it's not completely even in terms of like the parts supporting each other, right? So like for instance, you've got second violins doubled by I guess duet oboes. I mean it's a lot of strength, right? But the first violins have nothing supporting them at all, right? And then you got this middle part right in here, and the violas below and so on. So it's a bit, I mean, it's actually not an unpleasant mixture, but I just feel that it's weak at the top, right, with the way that everything else is supported in other parts and so on. All right. I actually really think this is fun, just like having everything on one screen. Very, very helpful. All right, so da-da-da-da-dum, bottom. And this is really neat, the handoff, right, to the first violins. It doesn't not work, right? Bum-bum, da-da-dum, ba-bum, bum. And this is cool. Da-da-dum, 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 da-da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. So the only caveat I would have about this is I am not so sure that instruments of different timbral character and articulation style work that well with this kind of trading off, right? Because like the ear will kind of focus in on the one that like the contrast between the lines, right? So it really doesn't, like, you don't really achieve that kind of beautiful motoristic continuity, right? So like here you do, right? Because we have the two violin groups working together, right? And some doubling of the oboe, right? But it's still, and then here you're going, you want to get the da 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 da, right? Okay, that's fine, but just please don't slur, right? Um, yeah, because like, you know, I mean, by slurring here, you end up with an imprecise ending 16th, and then this is like not a whole lot better, you know, right? Rather than da 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 da. So you really need the precision, and you need the impulse driving you on, you know, bum ba bum ba bum, right? Rather than this da and it just doesn't really quite, you know. I mean, I know that that's the way that it's sort of scored in the Beethoven, but like, you know, he's playing a percussion instrument, right? The piano is, you know, 88 different percussion instruments stuck together, right? So I don't think that this is going to work. This slurred staccato. But the slurs on these, you know, these little groups here, those are fine. That gives it a really nice feeling. And this is very cool, just the way that you have, you know, the way that this all comes together. This is some really nice scoring, I would say. But I wouldn't slur across the downbeat. What? Why? What for? You know, I think you want the smooth da kind of feeling, but yeah, really, just da da. I just like it's just so much better. You need, like, the players need to hear what the downbeat is. Like, these players are like they've barely gotten started, and then you're denying them the sense of articulation, the sense of punch on this beat from almost every other instrument, right? So yeah, just, you know, don't lead your orchestra to a, you know, who's got the downbeat show of hands. All right. But it's a beautiful full sound, and I like how you sort of make it more about like dynamics than like adding more texture. Yeah, and more spread out harmony. That's really nice. Yeah. Yeah, bassoons. Yeah, just really nice. But the only comment that I would have to say is, like, you know, having said that you're using the dynamic approach, you know, just sort of pushing harder to get, you know, different color, different, you know, leading somewhere with your energy. Um, you know, by just having the flutes up so high, you know, just like from the very beginning, like, and this and the rest of this, the way that this is all scored, you're taking away your opportunity to increase the scope gradually, right? So that, like, by the time you get to here, it's exciting and it's emphatic and it's great, and I love these trills up high here, and I would love them more without a duet. But I think that, like, I think it's just real, you know, oh boy, you know, it's just like a big horse ride. However, it's the same cavalry that you started with, right? It's not like, you know, you started with like a few riders and then some more people joined them, and then you had a whole stampede going by the end, right? So the scope is the same throughout the entire thing. So just think about that possibility. Like, you know, do the flutes need to be here yet, right? Is there a way of simplifying things, maybe holding off on the bass until a little bit later, right? Keeping the parts a little closer together and then expanding in both directions as you get bigger and bigger. And then just like you just need to be clearer with your dynamic markings, right? Because there's no forte here at the end in these lower parts. So, and there's no crescendo or anything. So it just, you know, it has to be a bit more proofread in those regards. And everybody, I think, should have the same dynamics. They should come to the same conclusion at the same time in the same bars, right? So just, you know, rather than the forte should go here or whatever, right? Or fortissimo, right? Isn't that what Beethoven says? So forte in this bar, fortissimo at the end. Anyhow, I mean, such a cool score, though. I mean, like it's bringing out the, you know, it's bringing out the garrulous explainer in me, and that can't be bad. So thanks for that, Kevin, and thanks for another great score. You always give me something that is really worth talking about and thinking over. And I just really, I appreciate this, every chance to continue the conversation with somebody who has been, who is improving as an orchestrator. And I hope that I am too, right? I hope that I haven't crossed every bridge, and that I'm always learning something new from my participants and from the challenge itself, and from the composer that I study, and everything I know about them. Just a couple words here, and that is, like, Beethoven is like mother's milk to me. I grew up, like, the first thing that I learned, the first piece of machinery I ever learned how to operate was a turntable. And it was for the sheer purpose of playing Beethoven symphonies over and over and over again. And one thing that was great about my mom and dad is they never said to not to do it. And my sister too, she might, like, get bored with me, but she didn't tell me to stop playing those records. And I mean, she was older than me, so she could easily boss me around. But she didn't. So, like, everybody just encouraged me to listen to as much music as I wanted to. And, I had, by the time I think I was maybe 8 or 9, like, I had a lot of those symphonies sort of memorized because I'd listened to them so many times. So I'd just pick up a Beethoven score, and, like, my dad had all these pocket scores, and I could just hear it because it was already in my head. So that was kind of part of my pathway to audiation. So, when the time came for me to sit down and do my own orchestration, it just all felt very, very natural. But that didn't mean that I didn't go back, just like Beethoven, over and over again to see if I could improve things. Some things I just found that I couldn't. The way that I had done it was probably not the way Beethoven would have done it, but it was the way that I would do it, right? And that was the decision. That was how I made that decision. So, I respect everybody else's interpretation and everybody else's journey to this too, because I know how hard it is. So thanks, Kevin. Thanks to all my Patreon supporters out there, to my website subscribers, everybody taking part in this, and you can take part in it without entering it, right? The way that you do that is to leave a comment below. Tell Kevin what you think about this. You do not have to be an expert at orchestration to leave a helpful comment, right? I mean, even if it's like you might not understand something and just ask for an explanation, or you might just really enjoy what he did at one bar or another, or the whole thing, or just have something supportive to say. You don't have to. But if you do know something that he could help him that I didn't mention, or if you want to back me up on something and with a different perspective, just say it, all right? Please. And Kevin, you know what to do with everybody else's score, right? So especially for these, your fellow semi-brev level, like if everybody, you, Kevin, and Colin, and everybody else who entered at this level on Patreon would comment on each other's scores, that would be great, That would be a lot of comments and a lot of people interacting. And that's really what I want with this. It's not just about me and my ability to blab on end about a topic that, only a few tens of thousands of people are into, right? To sort of judge by our community. So anyways, speaking of blabbing, I will stop doing it now, but I will just once again thank everybody, and especially Kevin right now for bringing me such a very cool entry, and for helping me share it with you. See you really soon with the next semi-brev level entry for the 2023 Orchestration Challenge.